It's finally here, guys. The long-awaited horror show here on the Mid-Level Media channel, The Haunting of Mid-Level. Stay tuned. What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Haunting of Mid-Level. I am your host, Ken, the Mid-Level Movie Critic, and this is episode 1, or as I think I'm going to call it, chapter 1 of The Haunting of Mid-Level. So this is a new show that is going to be on this channel weekly, every Thursdays at 3 o'clock. That is my plan, and I've been thinking about and wanting to start a horror show for such a long time. My love for horror runs so incredibly deep. It's every fiber of my being. As a film fan, as just a genre lover, loves the genre of horror. I have since I was a kid, since I was 8 or 9 years old. And this kind of feels like the culmination of just everything that I'm supposed to do as a movie critic or pundit or analyst or commentator. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, this is where I'm comfortable talking about horror with you guys. So, as you guys can see behind me, I changed a little bit of my setup. I usually have Blu-rays right here. And I wanted to show off and give myself a little credibility as a horror fan. So, these behind me are a lot of the VHSs that I owned back when I was 11, 12 years old. I would go to Walmart, Target, wherever VHSs were sold back then. I would receive them as Christmas gifts, birthday gifts. Everybody in my family knew I loved horror, so people would get me stuff all the time. And for whatever reason, my parents didn't care that I watched people being brutally murdered when I was like 10 or 11 years old. So, that my love for horror runs incredibly deep. And I want to go ahead and talk about just that for a second, just my history with the genre. And it's, I've been a fan since probably, I'm trying to think. The first real horror movie that I remember sitting down with and actually watching was Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. And I must have watched that movie when I was 9 or 10 years old, and I loved it. And I think from there I went into the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, because that, as a kid, like, that's probably the most accessible horror franchise, just because Freddy he's such a larger than life kind of character, and he's almost cartoonish in nature, especially when you get to those later sequels. So I think that kind of fit as a good entry point for a kid into the horror genre. And then from there, like, I remember being very young, and every single weekend I'd go to my local video store. My mom told me I could rent 2 or 3 videotapes every Saturday night, and I went straight to the horror section. I grabbed 2 or 3 tapes, and every single Saturday I would go back to the horror section and I would get 2 or 3 more tapes, and I would knock out whole horror franchises with 7, 8 installments in a couple weekends. And I went through the entire section and watched everything that they had. Obviously, they didn't have everything, and that's why I have a lot of gaps in my horror knowledge, but I saw franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, The Howling, Halloween, Critters, Silent Night, Deadly Night, Prom Night, and I would get other movies also from time to time, but my main interest was in horror. And why am I a horror fan? To me, just as a movie fan, and I go back and forth on this because I've grown much more into other genres as I've aged into adulthood. Like, I still love horror, but I definitely, when I was young, like, horror was it. Like, it was horror and it was Star Wars, and those were like the 2 things I loved. To me, it is the best representation of what the art form can be, as kind of like taking you out of this world and placing you into another. And there's other genres that can do that as well. But to me, like, horror is just so outlandish in tone and nature. And it never, like, there were horror films that I found kind of scary, but it never scared me because I always knew it was fake, and it was that aspect of it, because it was so just, it was so brutal and grotesque and dirty and disgusting that, it's like this can't possibly happen in real life, but it was fun to watch that play out on screen. And I don't know, to me it was just growing up, that was movies. Like that was movies. And now like I'm into dramas and real life scenarios playing out on screen. And just horror just had this ability to take me into another world for a couple of hours and just experience all these outlandish scenarios. And to me, that was always interesting and fascinating just as a film fan and a genre lover. So, um, yeah, I mean, I love horror. So, like, I'm gonna put all my cards on the table. I love it. So this is why I want to do this show. And that how I want to format this, guys, is I want to format it to fit kind of what you all want. So if you have any comments or suggestions for segments, for things that you would like me to cover, please, like, you can direct message me on my Instagram at any time. You can email me. I want to eventually get an email up for this page, but I also have one linked to my Instagram account at Mid-Level Movie Reviews. And, before we did this show, yesterday I put a little kind of Q&A thing up on my stories, and I had people ask me questions they would like me to address on the show. And so I've got 4 questions that later on, and they're great questions that I'm going to address, and I'm going to shout out those people. So those kind of user-generated questions and content is the kind of stuff I want to do on this show. And another thing is I just want to cover like top stories in horror. I'm probably going to do some reviews just of smaller horror films that I'll probably review on my Instagram, but I'll do little video reviews on here. Maybe clip those out later. So if you just want to watch those reviews, you can watch them there. 2 of the movies I'm going to go ahead and review today is We Summon the Darkness and The Turning, which I've watched both in the last 24 hours. So I'll be doing those reviews later on. But the first thing I'm going to do, guys, is let's get into the top stories. What's new in the horror universe this week? So the first thing I'm going to talk about, and it's kind of funny that I'm doing a horror show and I immediately go into superheroes. Like, that just doesn't feel right. But since a very prominent horror director kind of let it slip that he was going to direct an MCU film, I thought I would talk about it. So Sam Raimi came out in an interview last week with somebody, and they were just casually talking, and they brought up him directing Doctor Strange, and he kind of just nonchalantly said, yeah, I'm directing it. So Marvel hasn't announced that yet, but he pretty much did in that interview. So the idea of Sam Raimi directing a Marvel film, in particular Doctor Strange, after there's been rumors that it might be Marvel's first horror movie, that's very interesting to me on paper, just because Raimi has towed the line so well between horror and superhero, and he's done other genres as well, but he's so good at balancing those two things, and the comedy of the Marvel universe I think he can handle really well as also. So I think he's a great fit for Doctor Strange too. And if you have anything to say about that, go ahead and leave me a comment down below and we'll talk about it further. But I think that's an excellent pick for Doctor Strange too. It makes me instantly excited for the movie again, because I was kind of bummed when Scott Derrickson left the project, and it was kind of rumored that he left because he wanted it to be a more horror tone, and Marvel didn't want that. But then they bring in Sam Raimi, but it's like maybe they're not bringing him in because he's a horror director, maybe it's because his past experience with Spider-Man, and then it starts making your mind think of all this stuff about what if he brought Tobey Maguire in, or Andrew Garfield, and he made the Spider-Verse, because it's a Doctor Strange movie, you're dealing with multiverses. So all that could be pretty cool. And then my buddy and I'll go ahead and plug our podcast, but the Levels of Geek podcast is a podcast I do every Monday with Ultra HD Geek. And we also have an Instagram page. We have a YouTube channel, so you can check us out there, and I'll link down below. But we actually talked about Sam Raimi this week, and he joked about, well, what if he brought Ash in through the multiverse, and Ash was in Doctor Strange? So that's a very interesting thought. And he kind of combined Evil Dead with Doctor Strange. That would be kind of cool. But, Sam Raimi to direct Doctor Strange too. I think it's an excellent choice. I'm excited about it. Let's move on to the next story, and this one I found kind of interesting but a little disheartening, because to be honest, I don't know if I'm on board for the creators involved in this, but HBO Max apparently has ordered a Shining based series, and it's going to be called The Overlook, and it's from J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot. So at first glance, like, okay, a Shining TV show, that sounds kind of cool. But then I get J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot, and to me that just doesn't fit. And to be quite honest, I'm not a huge fan of J.J. Abrams right now. I'm not a huge fan of how he handled Star Wars, the finale, and as controversial as you might think that is. But yeah, and overall, I love The Force Awakens. I'm not a huge fan of his filmography. I don't love Mission Impossible 3. I don't love Super 8. And this isn't necessarily him directing it. He might not be involved in the creative aspect of any part of this, but he's involved at least in producer capacity in Bad Robot, and I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that fit, and to be honest, I don't know if I like them getting into the Shining universe again on a TV show. I thought they pulled it off so incredibly well, returning to that world and Dr. Sleep, and I don't want it to be tarnished further. But that's just my thoughts on that. Let's move on to the next story, and what looks to be kind of the next Hereditary, possibly, of 2020. It's an Australian horror film, and it's called The Relic, and it's heading to theaters this July 10th, so they announced the release date for that. And IFC is handling this one. I think it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival early this year, like back in January, when they were still allowed to do film festivals. And this movie, when I was reading about it, and I'm going to read that quick synopsis for it, but it says a daughter, mother, and grandmother are haunted by a manifestation of dementia that consumes their family's home. So that, to me, is kind of a hereditary type concept, because you're talking about a mother, a daughter, a grandmother. So right away, I'm getting those hereditary vibes, and a manifestation of dementia. Like, what does that look like? But it sounds really cool, and it's been getting rave reviews on the indie circuit, so I'll definitely be looking out for that one. I'm not sure if, I was trying to find some more information, if it's going to, it's probably not going to be releasing in theaters on July 10th, because I don't see theaters being open by then, or at least in a widespread capacity. But hopefully it'll be on streaming on July 10th, and that's what they mean by the July 10th release date. So, very interested in seeing Relic this year. So, we need another great horror movie, to be honest. 2020 has been seriously, outside of The Invisible Man, 2020 has seriously been lacking in horror. So, the other things I'm going to talk about is, I'm going to go into a little bit of TV here, but Creepshow, which is a Shudder original series, and it's already on Shudder right now. It's definitely something I want to check out soon. But Creepshow will be hitting AMC on May the 4th, and it was originally supposed to premiere on AMC as a part of like a 3-night special, and they were going to release it all, but now they're going to spread it out over week to week. So you got 6 episodes that are going to be spread out from May the 4th through June the 8th, doing one a week. So that's a little bit of a change. You also have the second season of NOS 4A2, the Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, adaptation, and it's already done its first season. And comment down below if you've watched that show. I've kind of heard mixed things on it, but I've been interested in checking that one out as well. That comes on AMC on June the 21st. So those are a couple of horror shows coming down the pike. And that does it, guys, for the news. Alright guys, so let's move on to some reviews, and before I do that, I'm going to ask you guys, if y'all haven't yet, and you probably have if you're here, but if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Mid-Level Movie Reviews. Go ahead and hit that bell up in the corner so you can be alerted every single time I post a new video. I have my 2 new shows that I started this week. I have the Physical Media Report that is going to be on Mondays at 3 o'clock, where I cover everything new in the world of physical media. And then I have this show, The Haunting of Mid-Level, which will be on Thursdays at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Thursday as well. So, and then I do my unboxing videos. I've got reviews, top 10 list. Right now I'm showcasing my entire collection, just kind of breaking that down into video by video. I did my Arrow collection last week. I did my Scream Factories. here pretty soon I'm going to do all my steelbooks, and we're going to go through them kind of section by section. So that's what I've got going on my channel. So go ahead and subscribe and turn on the bells. And please like this video. Every single like I get is going to help this video out. It's going to move it up the charts. It's going to get more eyes on it. And I definitely appreciate you all getting my content out there, sharing it with others, doing all that stuff. So liking this video would mean the world to me. And just drop me a comment down below, guys. Just how do you like this episode? Are you excited about me doing a weekly horror show? Do you have any ideas for me? Anything you want me to talk about? Just comments on what we're talking about here today as far as the news, my reviews, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm having a great time so far, guys, though. I love talking horror. And we're going to get into some more horror right here because I'm going to do a couple horror reviews. And they're not going to be long. I'm just going to talk about them real quick. But so Signature Entertainment, which is a media outlet, sent me this movie to review. Sent me like a digital copy, and I went ahead and watched it last night. But it's called We Summon the Darkness, and it actually has a pretty good cast. Alexander Daddario is in it, and Johnny Knoxville is in it. He's not in it that much, but he's in it briefly. So I got a chance to watch this last night, guys, and this is right now it's available on Vudu for $7, I think, to rent. And I think it's getting a Blu-ray release in a couple months. But this movie is a lot of fun. It's not great. It's not anything I would call like earth-shattering. It doesn't break the genre. It doesn't change the mold. But it does some interesting things just in terms of how it sets up its characters and its story. And it kind of flips things on its head about 30 minutes in. And you think you're going one way, and then it starts going the other. And you're like, whoa, hold on a second. But it's actually got a pretty cool little premise and how it plays out. My only issue is kind of once you make that discovery of what's really going on, it doesn't follow up and do anything that interesting after that. It just kind of turns into your standard slasher type thriller. And the title, We Summon the Darkness, it makes you think that it might be supernatural based, and it's not at all. It's way more kind of slasher. I would say it's like slasher, home invasion, just kind of like a thriller. But everybody in it's really good. Like Alexander Daddario, I'm not going to call her like a top tier actress, but I think that it's strange to me that she's still doing these kind of direct-to-video horror movies because she's done a lot of great things in her career. She did True Detective with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson the first season, and she was phenomenal in that. And she hasn't really lived up to her potential since then. And I know she's a working actress, and she's got to work, she's got to make money. And I shouldn't judge her, but I think that she's capable of better. But she brings a lot of credibility to this type of movie. And I definitely think she elevated it with her ability as an actress. And the other two actresses that were with her did really well also. And Johnny Knoxville, he's in it very briefly, but he's kind of menacing and scary in the little parts that he's in. So overall, I'm probably gonna put a review out for this on my Instagram, but I give it a 7.25 out of 10. It's a perfectly fun, enjoyable horror thriller that I think you'll get a real kick out of if you give it some time. So it's on Vudu right now for $7 if you want to check that out. So the next movie I'm going to talk about is not fun at all, and that is The Turning, starring Mackenzie Davis and Finn Wolfhard. And this movie came out at the end of January, I think, and it kind of continued the trend of the horrible year that we were having in 2020 horror. We had The Grudge, we had The Turning, then we had Hansel and Gretel, and we have Fantasy Island, Brahms the Boy 2, just a bunch of just really bad horror movies. And this movie didn't do the genre any favors coming out in January. And the thing that's disappointing about this movie is the cast is so good. Like the little girl, Brooklyn Prince, I think is her name is. She had like a performance of the year in 2017 with the Florida Project. She was such a phenomenal little actress in that movie. And yeah, it's not that she's bad. Like nobody's really bad in this movie. You got Finn Wolfhard. He's kind of playing the typecast role that he's kind of been given since Stranger Things. And he's getting bigger. He's getting a little bit more gangly and awkward. But he's good in the movie. He's kind of dark and sinister in parts, and it kind of works. And Mackenzie Davis, she's a great actress. I don't know if anybody watches Black Mirror, but she did one of the best episodes with San Junipero a few years ago. And she was in Terminator, Dark Fate. She was awesome in that. She was in Blade Runner 2049. She was great in that. Yeah, nothing wrong with the cast. Nothing really wrong with the performances, but the story, which is based on like an 1898 novella, The Turning of the Screw, I think is what it's called. And I don't really know the story that well, but this was a struggle, guys. It was a pain to get through. It was one of those movies where it's like I keep checking my phone, and I don't like doing this when I'm watching movies, but I keep checking my phone every 10 minutes. I'm like, God, is this movie almost over? And I didn't want to watch it, but it came out this week, so I was trying to review it. I knew I could talk about it on the show here today. Review it on my Instagram page and try to steer as many people clear of this movie as possible, but it's just not good. It's boring. It's very by the numbers. It reminded me of another horror movie that came out a couple years ago called Winchester, just where it kind of has that haunted house, dated, boring feel to it. It's very reminiscent of every haunted house horror film that came out pre The Conjuring, like in that 2000 to 2010 era, where almost every horror film sucked. I hate that era of horror. It's horrible. But yeah, The Turning is not good, guys. Do not watch it. I'm telling you right now. And I give it a 5.5 out of 10. And I usually don't go that low with my reviews, but The Turning is just not good. Steer clear of it. So the next thing I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to take a little bit of a pause. Not a pause, but I'm going to do a little kind of showcase of one of my collectibles. And then we're going to go into the Q&A, which I've got some really good questions that I want to answer of some followers of my Instagram page. And hopefully they're subbed here on YouTube. And they're going to watch this and they're going to see their names be shouted out to the world for everybody. But before I go into that, I wanted to introduce maybe not a new segment. This is my first episode, but a segment on this channel because I do collect a few kind of horror figurines and stuff. And one of the best companies to collect for is NECA. They do great work with horror figurines and stuff like that. And right here I have Friday the 13th Part 2. My favorite Jason, the Baghead Jason. So I'm going to go ahead and show this off. And really cool collectible. And I don't open these. I've never opened this. But if you bring this out right here, it shows him off in there. And you have the Baghead Jason. And you also get his mom. You get his mom's head. And a pitchfork. And a machete. And yeah, and a campfire. And that's awesome. And you also get an alternate head for him that you could put on as well. So really awesome, guys. I love NECA. They do great work. So I definitely recommend purchasing from them. And you can also find these in Target. You go on the back wall in Target and there's a bunch of them. But I only have a few right now. So I'm going to try to show off one of my kind of collectible toys or other stuff I have. Maybe pop figurines every week. And maybe that'll inspire me to buy more, so I can show them off on the show. So let's go into the Q&A, guys. The questions, and these are some really good questions that I can't wait to get into. So to be honest, guys, I didn't prepare for these questions. I got them last night. I wrote them down when everybody commented them because I kind of wanted to just to come up with my answer kind of off the cuff as I read them, like I would naturally in a Q&A, like if we were live or something. So let me get into these questions. And the first one comes from Iceman's Movies. And he asks, what's your all-time favorite horror movie? So what is my all-time favorite horror movie? And guys, if you follow me on Instagram, you might already know this because I talk about this movie a lot. And I reviewed it last year, I think, and it's a 10 out of 10 movie to me. It's one of the very few perfect films, and that's The Exorcist. The Exorcist, to me, it's a perfect film. It's one of the only films that I can watch to this day and still be freaked out by and scared. Like, it still gets me. If I watch The Exorcist, every time I watch it, I turn out all the lights, I get in a really quiet room, and I just watch The Exorcist, and I let it take over me for the 2 hours, for the 2 hour runtime. And the thing about it is, it's scary to me now in a way that it wasn't 20 years ago when I watched it. And this hasn't always been my favorite horror film. I used to just think The Exorcist was fine. It's something that's grown into my favorite horror film over the last 10 years. And it's just because it's so The horror from this movie comes from the mother's performance to me, because it's the idea that something's wrong with your kid and you're going to these doctors but you can't figure it out, and then she just keeps descending and descending into madness, and just crazy stuff starts happening. Just the way that William Friedkin shoots this movie, almost like a documentary. It's so scary. It's so unnerving, and all the performances in this movie are just great. Max von Sydow, rest in peace, perfect in this movie. Ellen Burstyn as the mother, she does something to me with this performance every time I watch it. And of course, Linda Blair as Reagan is just excellent. So let's yeah, The Exorcist, my all-time favorite horror movie, guys. So if you have not seen The Exorcist, God, what are you doing? What are you doing with your life and your horror fandom? Because you got to check that one out. So let's get into the next question, guys. And this one comes from Shane.movies. And he asks, what is my favorite classic horror character and movie? So I kind of answered the classic movie portion, because Exorcist is kind of a classic movie. I would define it as a classic movie. But if we want to go back a little bit further, and I can discuss my favorite classic horror character, and that is Norman Bates in Psycho. That is my favorite horror movie character. Now, if you want to go like overall, and the only way, like, you could say that Michael Myers is a classic horror movie character because of the one movie, but you have some sequels, movies I don't like, that kind of tarnish his character a little bit, and Michael Myers is kind of a more modern character. So if I'm going classic, I'm going Norman Bates, because he is the epitome of a classic horror character, a movie monster, a psycho, and he's, like I said, Psycho is one of the first horror movies I ever watched, if not the first horror movie. When he reveals himself at the end and comes out with that wig on and makes that face, it's one of the most scariest things I've ever seen in my life. Like, and he's just such a good character. He's so captivating. I watched that movie last year. Just when he's talking to her in the office and they're talking about taxidermy, and just the things he does when he cleans up after the murder, and I love everything about that character. I love everything about that performance. And I need to watch the sequels again, but I used to watch them a lot when I was a kid, and I think the greatness of his character carried over to the sequels, even though none of those sequels were obviously as good as the original. I think the greatness of that character carried over to the sequels, and because of Anthony Perkins and his excellent job and performance as that character. So Norman Bates is my favorite classic horror movie character. So let's move on to the next one, and this comes from a friend of the channel, a friend of my Instagram page. I've known this guy for a long time, and he does great reviews on YouTube, on Instagram. He has a great channel and page, and this is Movie Files, and he asks, what are my thoughts on the writer of Halloween Kills saying that this will be like the 78 version on steroids? So the first thought that comes to mind, to be honest, is of course you would say that because you want to sell your movie. And I'm not saying this because I didn't like Halloween 2018. I really liked Halloween 2018. It's a movie that I came out of the theaters, I was like, finally, somebody made a good Halloween movie, because it had been years since that had happened. And I loved Halloween 2018, but when he says that this will be like the 78 version on steroids, I'm like, of course you would say that. That's how you're trying to sell your movie. So, but I definitely like it. I definitely think it sounds intriguing. But to me, what that tells me is that they're going to try to maintain the classic, the creepy feel of the original, but they're going to add a lot more kills in there. They're going to add a lot more crazy kills and stuff like that. And, Halloween 2018 had a lot of kills too. So I don't know exactly how much further they can go. So I don't know. I'd have to look more into that, because Halloween 78 on steroids, it sounds good. It sounds good on paper, but then is that the kind of Halloween movie I want? Wasn't that like what Rob Zombie's Halloween was? Wasn't that like Halloween on steroids? I don't know. But yeah, so I'm definitely interested, and I couldn't be more excited to see Halloween Kills. So I hope that answers your question, Movie Files. Let's move on to the next one and the last question. And I love this question. As soon as I got it, I was like, oh, this this is exactly the kind of questions that I want on this channel, because especially I just love this, like, debates, movie versus movie, top 10 lists, stuff like that. But Campo Reviews asks, Halloween the Curse of Michael Myers or Halloween Resurrection? And that's all he put. So I'm assuming he means which do I like more, and I actually have both here right now. I have the Halloween Curse of Michael Myers unrated producer's cut, and I have Halloween Resurrection. This is actually the DVD that I bought in 2000. It was it must have been, so this came out in August 2002, so I'm guessing I did buy it in 2002, but I actually bought this when it came out. And yeah, so my first thought to this one is that neither one of these are good. Neither one of these are good Halloween sequels. And I used to think Halloween Curse of Michael Myers was for a long time. And then I actually rewatched all the Halloween movies before 2018 came out, and I reviewed them on my Instagram page. But I used to think that that Halloween Curse of Michael Myers was good, and Michael Myers was scary in that one, just because the mask was different and the feel was always different. But yeah, I kind of tricked myself for a long time, or maybe it was just my youth that thought, it was a better movie. But when I rewatched it, I was like, this just isn't good. And I love Paul Rudd to death. To me, like, the guy can do no wrong, but he's not good in this movie. And that pains me to watch Paul Rudd in a movie that's not good, and him give a performance that just sucks as Tommy Doyle. And it's just, yeah, The Curse of Michael Myers is not good, but it is better than this other piece of trash, that Resurrection. So if I had to pick which one was better, I think Halloween: A Curse of Michael Myers is a better movie, but just slightly, because Halloween Resurrection is just pure trash. It's pure trash. But to be honest, if you ask me which one I would rather watch tonight, getting off this live stream, I gotta watch Curse of Michael Myers or Resurrection. I'm probably gonna go with Resurrection. It's funner. It's funner to make fun of. Busta Rhymes yelling out "trick or treat, mother effer," and you got the reality show aspect of it, which reality TV was all the rage in 2002. So I guess they had to make a Michael Myers Halloween movie out of it. Where was Freddy's reality TV show movie? But anyway, yeah, Halloween Resurrection is like a benchmark for trash horror, but I wouldn't say it's the worst Halloween movie. I definitely wouldn't say that. That honor goes to another one that I'll talk about at a later date, because I don't feel like getting into that bad angry place right now. But yeah, so out of these two guys, Halloween Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween Resurrection, it's Curse of Michael Myers. That's the one that's the better movie. That's the better movie, although neither one of them are very good. So that'll do it, guys. That's pretty much it for my show, and I hope you liked it. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you want to come back for more. And if you do, leave me a comment down below. Ask me a question down below. Email me a question. I'm going to put up another kind of Q&A thing next week on my page, just to submit your questions to the show. That's how I'm going to try to do it every week until I get to where I can live stream this show. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what I want to do with this show, guys. I want it to be a kind of community show with everybody's involvement, because the one thing about the horror community is when you're in it, it really feels like a family more than anything else. And when you love horror, it's, like in real life, if I discover that somebody loves horror, like somebody I work with or whatever, just person I meet in life, it's like a little shared mutual respect. And it's like, oh, you're a horror fan too? Well, let's talk about this, and it's just cool. I love horror so much, and that's my goal with the show. I want to build a community around it. I want to get y'all to ask me some questions, anything y'all would like to ask, and I hope I answered everybody's questions well enough today. Like I said, I want to do these more long form shows on my channel, and I'm not used to doing long form shows, so it's kind of a struggle for me to be sitting here talking for 36, 37 minutes at a time. But it's something I want to get used to and I want to do more of. So thank you all for joining me here today on the Haunting of Mid-Level. I hope you enjoyed my first episode, and I hope that you'll come back for more. So please leave me a comment down below. like this video, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time.